Okay, in other news, in the news that everybody's been talking about, and the news that I've been looking forward to kind of put my 2 cents in when it comes to this is, does this gaming industry need to crash again? Because I don't know what is going on with the gaming industry when it comes to pricing. Now, I do understand that there's things that have been going on when it comes to pricing, such as RAM and the whole AI debacle. If you don't know what's going on with that, there's so many people covering that. Just basically, it's the idea that, the AI companies are buying up so much RAM that is basically making a shortage for the console, the video game companies, basically to, put in their hardware, which makes their prices go up, and just computers, hardware all across the board. But it's pretty interesting that in this time where we see the Steam Deck prop up in price almost $300 to get us to Steam Decks costing $1,000, the one company that everyone used to talk about and really would clown as far as prices, which is Apple, seems to manage to come out with a $599 MacBook in this time where these companies don't seem to be able to adjust to that. Now, I know Apple is very vertically integrated, and they are probably the, one of the exceptions. You can't really go comparing companies to Apple. And I get that. I do understand that. But it's just still comedic to me. It's funny to me nonetheless that in an era of raising prices, Apple seems to have figured out a way to drop theirs. So, that's just funny to me. But getting back to the main topic, gaming, does this thing need to head for a crash again? Does the gaming industry need a slice of humble pie, to really get this thing back in check again? Because, we've been headed here actually for quite some time. And I know some people, they've starting to catch on with the questionable state of the gaming industry with the recent Steam Deck increase. But me personally, I've been looking at this thing pretty much since the PlayStation 5. When PlayStation 5 managed to, convince people to buy PS5 consoles for $1,200, $1,500 during COVID, and during that time frame, and blamed COVID on it, and then it still never went down, and all this craziness. I knew that this thing was okay. I'm like, this thing is not, that's not good. $1,200, $1,500, that's ridiculous, And I know people are gonna say, "Oh, well, it's not Sony's fault and all that." I don't care about that. My personal belief is Sony had some hand in it. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. Because the reason why I said it is because the prices stayed there. That's another thing. A lot of these companies raise prices when it comes to systems, saying that, oh, it's because of the RAM. It's because of the tariffs, it's because of the shortages of parts and pieces. Okay, but then when these issues are resolved, they never drop the prices back down. They keep it up where it's at. So this is what I'm talking about, and this is the angle that I'm coming at this subject with when I say, does the gaming industry need to get a slice of humble pie to bring this thing back on down? And I get it. Things around the world happen and so forth like that. Tariffs and the situation with, the government and everything like that. And I get that, but I personally think that we seem to have gotten away from the thing that matters the most. And it's the games. And the reason why I say that is because not only are we looking at the prices, but we're looking at weird things going on in the gaming industry, which is this idea that we're not gonna have exclusives anymore. Okay, whose ideas are these? Why are we putting every game on every device known to man? That's gonna pretty much just completely eliminate your business model. Xbox, how is that coming? Xbox, they're basically out of here. Whoever's making those decisions, if you don't have exclusives, you don't have a business model, you don't have a business. That's just my opinion. I just don't see. You're pretty much just a computer from that point. You're a PC. You're a PC. You're basically a PC at that point. You know what I mean? You don't have a model. You don't have anything that really gets people to say, hey, let's get an Xbox. Because all your games are on the Nintendo Switch. All your games are on the PC. All your games are on the PlayStation. What reason should I buy an Xbox? And it's just that mentality that doesn't make any sense, right? And they're not the only ones that's doing it. PlayStation has dipped their toe in it as well by putting their exclusives on PC. That just doesn't make sense. I don't understand that. The purpose of us to buy a console is to get exclusive gaming. If you don't have exclusive gaming to your platform, then we might as well buy a computer. Nintendo's the only company left that seems to really understand this. And I know a lot of people are hard on Nintendo when it comes to the way that they handle their IPs and litigations and all that kind of stuff like that. But they're the only ones that seem to understand that, hey, it's the characters, it's our exclusives that really are the foundation of our business, and we can't play around with that. Is Nintendo sometimes very aggressive? Yes, but they should be. They shouldn't let anybody play with their IPs at all, because that's literally the foundation of the business. So I understand that, I totally understand that. So, that's why I say a lot of these weird choices and these weird decisions, in regards to, what's going on in the gaming industry, I'm thinking like, man, we need to kind of, the gaming industry might need to be humbled down again, because this is just not making any sense why these kind of decisions are being made. But we got to get back to the games. That's what we have to get back to. We got to get back to when we focus on, are these games good? Not how much money can we get out of the player? Not taking advantage of kids, by putting gambling mechanics in games where that doesn't even make sense to be in. And it just seems like these the gambling mechanics and the freemium mechanics, all this stuff, it's just like, I first saw this stuff appear in the mobile side, and then it just seems like that thing just leaked over to the console world. The gambling, the loot boxes, and all this is just like, this is trash, man. The DLC packages, which are laid out in confusing ways to confuse the customers. Okay. Season passes that don't have all of the items in them. What's the point of a season pass? So I have to buy a season pass, and then I have to buy the items that are not in that season pass, which should be included. That's the point of a season pass. They should be included in it. I have to buy them separate on top of the pass. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about that doesn't make sense. It just feels like you're purposely taking advantage of the customer. I should be able to go in and say, and know in short order, how much is it going to cost me to get this year's DLC or this season's DLC? I feel like every time now I go to the eShop or the PlayStation Network or whatever it's called now, I think they changed it. When I go to buy DLC, I have to basically get a calculator out and figure out what's the best route to buy all this stuff. Or is it even worth it? Right? And so this is what I'm talking about. This thing has kind of gotten way off rails. And I know the Steam Deck has really got people worked up because of that. Is kind of signaling this thing. It's a big marker when it comes to a potential crash, or does it need to crash? It brings the conversation up. But this thing, we got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to the games. Are the games fun? Not how real do they look. That doesn't necessarily signify a fun game. Is the game fun? And if we can get back to that, if we can get back to what really matters, we can swing this thing around. If not, then, we won't have, it goes down. So it's really in your hands, developers and game makers, and these organizations. If you ever hear this, it's in your hands. You decide the fate. Well, or I should say, the customer is the one that decides the fate. And customers want games. That's what we want. We want good games. That's what gets us excited to buy your product in the first place. So if you can remember that and don't let that go, hold on to the games and experiences, I think we can turn this thing around. So anyway, that's enough for me on my rant. when it comes to the gaming industry. I appreciate you guys for listening to me. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.